Hello, Graham from ArionGames here, and I decided to put up a short video talking about the rule set for Fantasy Grounds. So this is far from finished, but I've been playing around with it and I've been enjoying using it so much that I couldn't wait really until it's finished, because that could be a good few months yet. Now, for those of you who are not aware, Fantasy Grounds is a virtual tabletop software from Smiteworks. Now, I've been using this to run my online games for 10 years, probably more. And because my gaming group is scattered right across the UK, Fantasy Grounds has enabled me to run weekly, even bi-weekly games and continue gaming even though my players are miles away. Now we do still meet up now and again, a few times a year, but this makes it easy to run a game. Now, one of the limitations of many of the virtual tabletops is that either they're really simplistic, which is fine, and there are various different types, which is great. So they're either very simplistic, which means you have to do all of the working out yourself. Effectively, it just becomes a dice roller app. Alternatively, you've got systems like Fantasy Grounds that have all sorts of automation, fancy bits, and so on. Now that's great, but the downside is you need a rule set, you need a character sheet, you need the automation programming in. And the complexity of these softwares is such that you cannot just sit down and go, done, that's my rule set. Now you can get halfway there quite easily, but getting it really automated is quite difficult. So some years ago we did actually have an AFF rule set, but because the key software, the core software, has moved on in that time, we decided to put together a new version of the AFF rule set. And I would say now, I am not the programmer, I am not the one doing the work on this. There's an incredibly talented programmer based in New Zealand who's doing a lot of the work, and I'm advising and assisting when necessary. But without further ado, on with the demonstration. So we have our rule set here with our dice. And I'm going to skim over the basics of Fantasy Grounds. If you're not already aware of them, there are plenty of videos out that will talk about that. So at the moment, what we have is a character sheet. So our character sheet at the moment has space for name, portrait, character details. We have room for skill, and from here we can make a skill roll. And as the dice fade, you can see that this failed. We have 7 skill, we rolled an 11, therefore we fail. We can make a magic roll. Now that's obviously going to fail because I've rolled a 6 and we've got 0. We have no magic points on this character. What we do have though is we can also make a luck roll. So we've got 11 luck, we roll a 6, that's a success, but you'll now see that our current luck has gone down to 10. If I attempt it again, another success has now gone down to 9. And of course, if we keep making luck rolls, sooner or later it's going to get to the stage where we fail. And of course, it never does what you want on these demos. There we go. So we've failed there because we've rolled over our 5 current luck. Now we've got the weapon tracks and armor tracks. We can roll a combat roll from here. Now at the moment, it only adds on straight skill. So we've got a combat total of 19. It doesn't have the crit success and the fumble on there. And at the moment, it doesn't reference the special skill either. But that is the next stage, and that is ongoing at the moment. So within a week or two, it'll do that. But once we've made our attack roll, we can then make our damage roll. So that does 2 damage. You can see here it says did 2 damage. Our armor absorbed no damage, because I only rolled a 2. Let's see if I can get a much better roll. There we go. Absorb 2 damage with a roll of a 5. And again, these will have options where you can customize them, where you can add in bonuses to the armor roll, the damage roll, to your attack modifier. You can change the skill that is relevant, and so on. That will all be automated. we've got it so that it's a workable character sheet. What we now need to do is work on the automation. We've got a skill tab. So for example, we can make an acrobatics roll. That's based on skill, and that's success because we've got 7 skill, 1 in acrobatics. We need to roll an 8 or less. We did. We can also make our knowledge skills based on magic. We can drag skills in from a skills list. So if we drag in magic wizardry, we can put 1 point in that, and we can assign that to magic, and we can roll it there. Now it's going to fail. Obviously it's going to fail. We've got 0 in magic, so we can't roll a 1 or less. So we can have our skills there. We will also have a list of talents. We need a talents button on here yet, but we can then put in here strong arm or whatever. In our spells list, again, we can drag in from a predefined list. So we can drag in far. If I drag it onto the character sheet, that's a sorcery one. It costs 1. Now again, we're going to have a dice on here. When you roll it, it will deduct stamina, it will deduct magic points, etc. We can also put in minor magic like attraction there, and that's a cost of 0, and so on. We also have an inventory tab. So we will at some point then have a long list of items you can drag in. We can record gold pieces, silver pieces, and so on. And you can also customize these items as well. And then we've just got the notes tab for appearances and so on and so forth. And so that's our workable character sheet, and that allows you to run a game in Fantasy Grounds. Now, of course, what we also have is we can put adventures in. So for the playtesting, I've actually put in where is it? The Wishing Well, which you might recognise. And for those of you not familiar with Fantasy Grounds, I can then click on Guard Room, and there are, let's get rid of these creatures. In the Guard Room, I haven't loaded the right module, but when I drag it, it will then populate it with the 4 goblins. Let's activate this. I thought I had activated it, maybe I haven't. But what we can then do is we could populate it, say, with the 4 goblins. So they would appear on here like that. And as you can see, they're listed as small brown humanoids because they haven't yet been identified. Once they've been identified, they become goblins. And again, I'm not going to go all the way through the combat tracker. I'm not going to go all the way through all of the features we have on here because this is not a Fantasy Grounds demo. It's an AFF rule set demo. But once it's finished, which will be hopefully in the next few months, but certainly before the end of the year, once it's finished, we should have automation, much more automation for combat, for spell rolling, for skill rolling. We have some tables. So for example, in the Wishing Well, you have the orc, you drink the orc ale in the cafe, and you can roll on that, and oh look, drinker becomes violent but will fall unconscious after 3 rounds, will wake after 10 minutes, suffer the effects, and so on. We will have things like the spell fumble tables on here. We will have any combat fumble tables, and so on. So we will have all of this automation, and then we will put together a separate module with all of the monsters from Out the Pit, and follow that up with a Beyond the Pit and a Return to the Pit module. And each of these monsters, so if we look for example at Goblin, and obviously we're now getting rather crowded on here, so I'll trim this down. If we look at Goblin, we've got skill, stamina, attacks, weapons, armor, etc., etc., with its habitats number. So all the details from there, and then again there will be the descriptive text in there, and we can even have our picture. So all of those will be linked in, and we will do a module for all 3 of the monster books. We will also do an add-on extension for Hero's Companion. We will do an add-on extension for probably for Stellar Adventures. And what we will also do is release things like Crown of Kings and Warlock of Firetop Mountain and so on as pre-loaded campaigns. So you load them in, you run the adventure. Okay, nice and easy, nice and quick. Now, I'm not going to go into any greater detail on this now because at the moment it is very much still a work in progress. But it's coming along really, really nicely. If you are a Fantasy Ground user and you want to give this a try in your AFF game, by all means, send me a message, drop me an email, and we can sort that out because we do need some people playtesting it. But at the moment, it is looking really quite good, and it is at the moment playable. You can run a game using this. Yes, you have to manually work out who wins a combat. You have to manually work out modifiers and so on. But you can easily run a game from this rule set at the moment. So I think that brings this to a close. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, good gaming.